I was kind of surprised seeing this get as much discussion as it did initially. Not necessarily because animation's an underappreciated medium and no one respects it, but because I'm used to seeing shit like this under the cover of darkness. It's just rumors and secrets and hearsay and whispers on the wind. Nothing of this caliber that I can remember has been left out for public consumption in at least in a while. And something like this is definitely primed for proper discourse. I'm amazed and confused at how much crossover there is between these two fucking events. It hasn't even been 4 months, and we're already getting a repeat of this shit. If you're watching this video, you probably already know what's going on. But here's a little teal deer for the culture, right? AT&T bought up what was known as Time Warner for about $80 billion in 2018. They stuck around for a long-ass time to negotiate this merger into existing, and when they finally had Warner Media in the palm of their fucking hands, they didn't do shit. So a few years after that, they decide, well, we didn't make our money back. Time to sell this shit off. So they spun off Warner into its own thing. They sold it into Discovery, and the both of them are set to merge early this year. The CEO of Discovery takes over, gets rid of all the high-ranking brass of the Warner Media folk, and then this motherfucker starts capping all the content that we know and care about. It's a massacre, it's a bloodbath. Everyone's fuming over the decision. The government might have to step in. They might have violated some antitrust laws and things like that. In general, shit is fucked, and it keeps getting fuckier. What appalls me is the similarity to the Netflix situation of a few months ago, one that was largely considered to be an anomaly. Having all this shit aired out in public is weird enough, but the sheer magnitude of stuff they got rid of while they were still in production was very concerning, to say the least. And as fucked up as that was to see play out, it's easy enough to compare and contrast these two situations and draw an inference that this one can be a lot more destructive in the future. Both of these stories were broken by outside entities, informed by people on the inside. They were acting as whistleblowers. Both of them were motivated by presumed loss of capital, few hasty business decisions, but generally just a loss of money. The deal with Netflix was kind of telegraphed for a while. Even as early as January, February, you could see industry people kind of naysaying, the death of shit. Warner Bros. Discovery, generally speaking, not really known about. I mean, there's been rumors that are now surfacing about other things happening, but this happened without pretty much anyone knowing. This Netflix shit happened within the course of a week or two, and the Warner Bros. Thing looks like it'll extend out indefinitely. Netflix's kill count, it's limited to about a dozen, maybe 2 dozen shows between the ones that were in production and the ones that were in development. Meanwhile, these motherfuckers at Warner Bros. Discovery have several dozen series in the can, either that were stripped from HBO Max or just canceled. Probably a lot more in development that will not be active in the coming weeks, and the kill count is rising. The Netflix thing was also interesting too because while it was considered an oasis for animation faithful, they still had other places to go after it was all said and done. They could go back to Disney or Cartoon Network or whatever the fuck. Warner Brothers is one of those entities. That's where they went when shit popped off in April. So this has wider implications for the future. Warner Brothers in general is just one of the big giants of American entertainment. So, I mean, if this shit's happening over there, what does it mean for the future? As much staying power as Netflix has right now, The Purge was at least somewhat contained. Didn't have much potential to spread beyond its borders. But again, given the gravity of where this is happening and who it's happening to, this could be a bad omen, not only for consumers, but also just company-wide staff in the other sectors. If Disney decides to pop off and start capping series left and right, it could set a bad precedent. Shit could be infinitely more fucked as time goes on. These are just some of the differences and the similarities between them. It's only been about a week since the Warner Bros. Discovery Purge has been divulged, and there's still reactions and developments pouring in. It's a safe bet to assume that Warner Bros. Discovery will have a little trouble finding people to work with them in the future, given the circumstances, but there are plenty of other possibilities that could develop in the meantime. The biggest speculation that has been afoot is centered around the existence of Cartoon Network itself, the studio, the brand, or the entity. Any one of those could go the way of the dodo in a matter of a year or two. That is the current consensus. Not the best news for the people on the ground, especially not very good news for a channel institution that is turning 30 years old in October. I'm sure y'all don't want to hear any more about this guy that is responsible for all of this shit. I think it's important to study your enemy. Unless we find ourselves in closer quarters in the near future, you do want an understanding of who this guy is and what he might stand for and what his goals are. So I did do a little light reading before this, and I cobbled together some notes. Maybe it'll give you some insight, maybe not, but I thought it was important to divulge it anyway. David Zaslav, the director of the Great Purge. He started his career in the late 80s at NBC. He was put in charge of a few of their niche brands, more specifically having the title of Cable and Domestic TV and New Media Distribution. That is a mouthful. He came to oversee a metric fuck ton of channels, including but not limited to Bravo, Sci-Fi, Telemundo, USA Network, and the Olympics on cable, if you can believe that. Later on, when NBC Universal became a thing, his reach branched out to encompass A&E, the History Channel, Biography Channel, Nat Geo International, Sundance, and TiVo as well. And when he became Discovery CEO in 2006, he kept that ball rolling, but he worked to expand on that core mission. So for him, that meant taking those niche brands and then turning them into super empires. So there were plenty of projects that were helmed in his wake, like OWN, The Hub, Destination America, all those channels. And they became bigger and badder than they would be before, and they usually turned out successful. This is likely where the existence of the genre-dumb model was birthed. Right after that merger was locked in, it was noted to praise the wide, sweeping demographic reach of Warner and HBO Max and all of their entities. It seemed important to him to keep that, but it also seemed important to keep the value of the Discovery brands close. And based on the disparities that his team found between those two platforms, it seems like his plan is to try and simplify the reach of both of them when the combined streaming service happens. The typical audience for the former seems to lean into family co-viewing and such with their SUVs and their traveling buses. So instead of leaving the splintered Max audiences behind or trying to have the unified Discovery audiences merge into Max, they're trying to simplify everything. That's presumably part of the reason why he's trying to make CNN a bit more, I don't know what the fuck you call that, conservative friendly? I don't know. Now, there's been sufficient speculation that Zaslav is right-leaning, trying to cut the news entity's very slight liberal bias and play ball with both sides definitely doesn't and shouldn't rub people the right way. That, paired with the numerous diverse executives at Max being given their pink slip abruptly, that doesn't spell very good news, does it? I don't think any of his current decisions really point to any political ideology. Well, any personal political ideology, anyway. It just seems like a series of selfish and myopic business decisions, just an average Tuesday. In trying to blend the audiences of both platforms, he is hacking and slashing at the fibers that holds HBO Max together, and it'll likely make for a noticeable shift in public response to its content. And with the advent of the lost HBO Max series mostly being wiped from digital distribution and such, it will also affect how they choose to interact with them. There's a giant elephant in the room that has sashayed its way in the wake of all this. This is still a hot button issue, and I have no energy to try and have polite discourse with anyone who wants to argue about it, but I guess we're going to talk about it anyway, so here we go. Piracy has a really interesting place within the ethos of creative industry. There's always been an interesting conversation to be had about the merits and the pitfalls of piracy, But the moral grandstanding from either side has always been pretty cringe. Don't like that shit. Incredibly lame, even in this context. I don't even think really dusting off that old physical versus digital debate really helps in this circumstance, and we don't have time to disseminate that shit. But if you were wondering why show creators are so gung-ho about endorsing piracy for their art now, or maybe you feel a little weird about it, you can dig into that, just a little bit. See, there's a lot that goes into a show being made, and legally speaking, conglomerates usually cross their T's and dot their I's meticulously to make sure that they can do whatever the fuck they want with your shit. So there's a lot of trust required to enter into any agreement. There's an understanding that if you play ball, you listen to their feedback, and maybe even fall in line if you have to, they will help you make your art. There's plenty of times where shit falls by the wayside, but both sides have to trade off in order for that shit to work. What Zaslav did here, presumably without further consultation from the people who were affected, was take a giant sledgehammer to that whole framework. There's a whole glut of unspoken rules and boundaries that he's nullified in one fell swoop, and he showed a blatant, unempathetic disregard for the more vulnerable side of this coin. He broke the social contract, and based on past evidence, he would not be too shy about doing it again. The course of people's whole careers were wiped out in the blink of an eye, without any warning, and any regard for how they'd survive past the initial purge, for the sake of negligible returns. Like, it's not a big leap to assume that not as many people were pulling up those old 1973 editions of Sesame Street, but don't you think the principle of taking this public tool away from your premium streaming service might be worth a little bit more? It's likely he doesn't care about a lot of these shows. He might not even know that they exist. But to have this thing, this entity, this show, that oftentimes represents the deepest parts of yourself or your formative experiences just eliminated out of the blue, it can make you feel a lot less like you're a part of the team. There's a lot to be said about piracy, but it's clear that there's no room to be black and white about its implications and applications. There are plenty of utilitarian uses for what's pirated and how it is pirated. When you think of lost media, you might think of like 1950s TV shows or beta versions of old games, but there are plenty of tools that have been retrieved and saved as well. It would be naive to pretend as if these long-ass videos were not possible without a little yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum, but the cartoon community at least tries to follow the rules. They know that this shit doesn't work a good chunk of the time, but they try to be good sports about it because we know that the creators on the other side usually depend on that. There's a lot of wiggle room based on how you go about it, but there was no leniency granted here. He broke the contract without even reading it, and there's no reason for creatives to uphold it in the current year when their life's work becomes null and void in a minute. We may try to follow it for the sake of best practices in the future, but if it is a matter of breaking this conversation down to practicality, then this is a choice that is likely within everyone's best interest. I'm sure there's plenty of you that recognize that you wouldn't give a damn about any of these shows, whether they live or die. You have enough cognizance to acknowledge that Uncle Grandpa wasn't on your monthly watch list. You know that. I know that. Some of you probably feel like these shows won't be missed and that it shouldn't really be a big deal. And you do have a point there. But this fight is not about this clutch of shows in particular. We're living in a time where the possibilities for animation specifically have never been greater, but that implies in both directions. The artists' abilities to innovate, speculate, and collaborate through their work are easily matched by the corporate entities' abilities to devalue, demand, and demoralize through their own work. Once somebody realized that cartoons are moderately big bucks, there was actually an incentive present to tighten the belt and crack that whip. And often the excuses stem from the rising costs, and they always conveniently leave out all the loopholes and the empty promises that are used to perniciously penny pinch each fledgling production. They gotta pay everyone less because they're on the jobs for a shorter time, and they're on the jobs for a shorter time, so the work of four has to become the work of one. And each one is doing the work of four because there's a bigger crew, and there's a bigger crew because the cartoon has to get done on a tight deadline, and they gotta get done on a tight deadline, so we have to consolidate some work, and we gotta consolidate some work because they gotta pay everyone less, don't you know? I'm not gonna strip these processes of all their nuance, or at least I'm not gonna try, but it's easy enough to point out the hypocrisy and the fallacies in all this. It is stressful enough to think about the production side, let alone the creative implications of how these shows are treated. Cartoons take a long time to make, even more so in the current age. People in TV are given less time to create compelling content, but their ideas incubate and evolve over many, many moons. In feature, you can add several more years onto that pipeline, not to mention all the time that's possibly spent in development. It's common enough for a piece of media to come out and just kind of exist. I don't know if you knew that, but that's kind of normal. In the streaming age, it is a constant race to the bottom. Long before Discovery even thought to buy Warner Media, everyone's been pitting your favorite shows against each other for the sake of algorithms and empty numbers. The way that they greenlight shows still shares enough in common with the old method to look alike, but there's a covert mission to have something, anything, become the next big thing without any regard for what it is as art. Possible computational flaws aside, the platform is way more likely to bury the lead than highlight your show to people who can put some respect on its name, and there's quite a few examples of series and movies that were saved by other platforms that had recognized the value in these shows that got bucked off their original platforms. Not every show or movie was built to be a runaway success, and insisting that they would be merely serves to be the fastest, cheapest, cleanest way to pigeonhole all of modern entertainment. Art is supposed to be versatile. It's supposed to represent different things, but arbitrarily there's a lot more riding on them, to the end that determining how much a prospective audience values it enough to extend its lifespan is basically a snap decision. It is super rare in current year when a network will allow a show to gradually become good that wasn't already pre-planned or batched out for a couple of years. They're made from the jump to either last a bit of time or be burnt off if the shit doesn't work out, and that leaves plenty of ideas caught in the middle of that. Tig N Seek and the Fungies are two shows that I feel very differently towards, but they are also two shows that I can say with full confidence would have actually had a performance to speak of if they aired on linear TV as nature intended. Think back to when you were a kid. Think about the slate of stuff that you consume on an average weekday afternoon. Chances are it's composed of way more than Pokemon or SpongeBob. Those shows that lurk in the background, or only netted moderate success, are likely not game-breaking material, but they were given the dignity and the space to exist and breathe in relative peace. It's vital to the health of any one platform to foster different breeds of shows. You gotta have different flavors of things going on, because without those guys in the background, the landscape is a lot emptier. It is unconscionable that these modern shows with modern resources got to have extended international airplay and not air in the one place that probably would have mattered most in their situation. No matter how you feel about them, and I know a lot of you don't, but no matter how you feel, they were robbed out of their shot to make an impression. I don't think there's really a way to sugarcoat any of this, and even if there was, I wouldn't want you to. The shit it's a mess. It's horrific. It's bad news for art. It's bad news for entertainment. It's bad news for consumers. It's bad news for creatives and productions. It's a hot mess of epic proportions. And this is why you need to start giving a damn about these issues before shit pops off. New Deal for animation is not going to outlive its usefulness just because they reached a deal. One deal today is not going to deal with anything that's coming up in the next year, or the next decade, or the next century. It's like baby steps towards the end goal. But it's not, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I have no bright note to end on. What I wanted to do, at least, was talk about the shows in question and the people that made them. There are several dozen of them, but I figured it would be best to start off with 12 of the befalling Cartoon Network originals and a couple of Warner Bros. Projects, because those are probably the ones that you're more likely to give a shit about. This is a starting point. I want you to build off from here, drop some links to some other creatives and other avenues where you can find these shows in the comments, sound off, get it going, get a move on. It's been a week. It's been a week. We need more resources on this shit. And we're not getting any younger. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, but I figured it would be good to have on hand. Aquaman, King of Atlantis, still available on DVD as of today. Still available on digital. It's up on Apple TV if you want to go buy it. It's only $5. A lot of the alumni that worked on Aquaman came from Thundercats Roar. I think Yabba Dabba Dinosaurs. I think Jellystone might be part of that too, so go support those shows. Elliot from Earth, completely wiped out, eliminated. No DVD for it. It's up on digital, Amazon, Google Play, Vudu, YouTube. The original developer of Elliot has been working on some Valorant content. He's been working with Riot Games. Go throw that a watch. You already know how I feel about the Fungies. We don't need to go into the 50-minute spiel about how great it is. There's a crew production blog that you can go visit if you want to check out the show. The creator of the Fungies, I think he's on break right now, but little birdie told me, he has some comics. He has some good shit going on over there, so if you want to read him, you can follow him on Twitter, Instagram. The show is not on DVD. It is on digital through those avenues that I previously ran through. Infinity Train, the standard bearer of modern Cartoon Network. There was a DVD for books 1 and 2. Both of those are pulled. They're only available secondhand at the moment. I would say go pursue them. Tread very lightly. I think give it a month or two. Maybe things will start to simmer a bit, because god damn. Still available on digital. All the platforms, including Apple TV, so go get it. As of now, the soundtrack for Book 1, I believe, is still up on Spotify. The creator of Infinity Train has a Substack. There's one post up there that had provided updates on the HBO Max situation. So you want to go follow him there. Mau Mau. Oh man, this show has been put through the ringer every step of the way. There's no DVD. They've never released a DVD for Mau Mau. It's still up on digital. That includes Apple TV, so go and grab it. The creator of Mau Mau is active on Twitch, streams a lot of games, developing his own game right now, and he does a little bit of Let's Play content with the voice of Badger Klopp, so go on over there, check that shit out. Mighty Mage Swords is an old soul. We've lost it long ago, but it deserves to not be forgotten. I've been watching it as I record this video right now. It's still pretty good shit. Never got a DVD. Still available on digital, and as of the 26th of August, still streaming on Hulu. You're gonna want to follow the creator on Twitter. Check out that Bandcamp. His music is pretty dope. OK KO, an absolute titan, a legend in the field. Everybody loves KO. What more is there to say? There was a DVD or two that was in fact pulled. It should still be available secondhand, but I cannot say for certain. Still available on digital. Still streaming on Hulu as of August 26th. A little birdie told me Ian is still working on some good shit, maybe an original project here or there, so when it comes out, when it's announced, be sure to give that all types of clout. Summer Camp Island is an interesting one because somewhat similar to Elliot from Earth, there's still episodes that need to be released in that final season that seemingly will air on TV, but obviously won't be on streaming at the moment. It seems like the first 3 seasons had an Australian release on DVD. Those are definitely pulled by now. They should be available secondhand, and they should be Region 1. So you should be able to play them if you're in America. The show is still available on digital. The creator, Summer Camp Island, has a Substack too. You're going to want to go follow her over there for some developments and things. Tig N Seek was done dirty long ago, like the Fungies and Infinity Train and all of those shows. You can follow the creator on Twitter. Can go and follow his band at this link as well. They do good shit. I'm also linking in the art director for Tig N Seek because he was pretty outspoken about the initial Purge early on, so it was easy to kind of follow him. Go check out his prints. Go buy him up. They're pretty rad. He has a couple of graphic novels out, and they look pretty cool. No DVD for Tig N Seek to be spoken of, but it's still available on digital. So go check it out. Uncle Grandpa is also one that we have lost long ago. The DVDs for Uncle Grandpa, as far as I know, are still available. It's still available on digital, and as of August 26th, it is still streaming on Hulu, so go check it out. Obviously, the creator of Uncle Grandpa is on to bigger and better things. He's still on the inside, you know. Of course, he's been helming projects over for Looney Tunes, so hopefully his stuff comes to pass. Victor and Valentino, this one airing its final episodes this week. DVDs are still available for the show. It's a compilation disc, you know, there's only a few episodes on it, but if you want the show, that's one way to find it. It's on digital platforms, including Apple TV, so go grab it. Interestingly enough, it is kind of streaming on the Cartoon Network app. Season 1 and part of Season 2 right now is on there. They're locked, but they're there. And finally, we got Yabba Dabba Dinosaurs. They should share a lot of alumni with Aquaman, Thundercats, Roar, you know the rest. No DVD was made available for it. It actually got kicked around quite a bit, but it is available on digital, including Apple TV, so go and grab it while you get the chance. For now, that is pretty much it. Hopefully we don't need to add to this list, but I don't have much confidence in that statement. Like, comment, subscribe, eat your vegetables, stay in school, and I hope that 30th anniversary celebration is worth it. Because if it turns out to be the last birthday that we can truly commemorate, it better be the biggest bash that we have ever seen.